so on and so forth. They invested about 400,000, they saved about 600. And the ROI is, payback period is 1.5 months. So if you look at GHG as a tool for making good decisions for efficiency improvement, it is not something that companies should say, oh, that's a waste of time, it's a difficult thing to do, it's just irrelevant. Okay? So more and more, and for that they get recognitions, they can, of course, communicate to their stakeholders to build their corporate image. And more companies in the Philippines are doing carbon footprint, and as bigger companies do carbon footprint, especially if they look at their supply chains and logistics, more and more smaller companies will be required to do also carbon footprint. Just a quick preview about the tool. Because there's such a wide range of methodologies, an organization called WRI, World Resource Institute, came up with a so-called greenhouse gas protocol. And this is an international standard being used by companies around the world to standardize the calculation of carbon footprint. And it was developed in 1998. NGOs, businesses, multi-stakeholder, and so on, being adopted around the world by these art pioneers and so on. But what it does, what it provides is that it has a standard, a whole Bible of how you as a corporate entity can calculate and account for your carbon footprint as an organization. Also another tool that allows you not just to look into your company, but also the value chain, meaning the upstream logistics and the downstream logistics, including everything in the middle. Okay? There's also a product level standard where for each bag, for example, you might want to look at the standard can tell you how much carbon footprint each of these would have from when the leather was sourced from the cattle all the way to when it is sold to you. So these are guidance documents. There's even for public sector and for cement industry and so on and so forth. So the tools are there, the methodologies are there, and it's there for you to use and apply in your different companies. Okay? So the process really is just this when you do an inventory. First, you will have to set a boundary. Which of your operations in your company you would like to do an inventory on. Then you identify the sources of emissions within these operations. And then you calculate, which is just math. And then you set a reduction target. Of course, you don't do calculation inventory just for you to calculate, but you need to look into the initiatives for you to be able to reduce, because the value really is reduction. No? So and then you might want to report it because it could enhance your corporate image. Okay? So while there are also equivalent standards by ISO, I won't go into the details for that, but just to put it forward that there's GHG protocol and ISO guidance standards. An example of an initiative we've held also in terms of providing technical assistance is a company, well, Meralco, you saw it, see it there, looking into their fleet and assessing their fleet efficiency, because we're talking now about productions. Okay, so what they did was, well, they conducted trainings for their drivers, looked at their vehicles, whether the vehicles are the right sizes and so on and so forth. They set targets for themselves, they looked at their data and implemented a set of approaches, including even just putting tire gauges, because these are very critical on improving efficiency of vehicles. And the result is actually an increase in savings for that amount. Okay, so those who are in logistics or also procuring logistics services might want to recommend the suppliers that they might want to look at clean fleet management as an initiative to reduce their carbon footprint, and also, of course, to reduce to have savings in fuel and base oil. Okay, these are just pretty standard things that we and examples: gas lightings. This is an this is for factories, low Unilabs, and so on and so forth. You might have also seen this, solar tubes. Okay, these are all examples, right? So in the end, there are tools. Somehow you've seen an overview of how carbon footprint could be relevant in your different business activities. Is there, if there's anything we can do to help you, you can contact us through your organization leaders. And I hope my advice to you is that not just 99% sound. I hope it's the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonner. Our second guest speaker is a process consultant and is currently handling consultancy projects in the area of corporate social responsibility, energy and environment resource management, and sustainability reporting. He has the capacity in managing and delivering CSR strategies, sustainability reporting based on GRI guidelines, as well as energy efficiency, best practice, and managing carbon footprint and neutrality. He has handled major projects like Puma Save. Puma Save is implementation sustainability practice and initiative for Puma, the shoe manufacturer, for its suppliers across 4 countries in Southeast Asia. He had developed 2013 sustainability reports for huge companies like Aboitiz Ventures, Security Bank, Nestle, Globe Telecom, Ayala Corporation, and Manila Water Services, to name a few. He also did carbon footprint assessment for Hershey's. He gained major certifications like Certified Sustainability Assurance Practitioner and ISO 14064 Emission Lead Auditor GHG, Greenhouse Gas Emission. He holds a Master of Science degree in Mechanical Design Engineering from the University of Manchester, UK, and a Bachelor's degree in Mechanical Engineering from the University of MP, India. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Harvey Shrivastava.
Yeah, good afternoon everyone. Yep, hope you had a nice lunch, and thank you Wanda for your presentation. It was really nice. I was just worried at the back that most of the topics are covered already. I don't know what I'm going to cover. But still, just to give you an overview, I'm working with Assist Asia, which is an NGO which works on PPP capacity development programs. So funded by the European agencies, we implement the programs in the country as well as in the region in terms of building the capacity on sustainability and CSR initiatives. So that's the major work which we do in the region. I work with them as a technical consultant, helping them in doing the mathematical calculations because I hold an engineering degree. So, to begin with my presentation, I hope it's there. Okay. Thank you. So, beginning with my presentation, I'm going to talk to you about how do you measure carbon footprint. We have heard about it a lot, the GHG emission, GHG protocol, but what's the actual method of calculating your CO2 emission? Because you heard about GHG emission, what's the need, why is it so useful, but there should be a way how to calculate how much are you emitting. There has to be a quantitative method. So I'm going to discuss with you how to calculate your carbon footprint. At the same time, once you have measured it already, how do you cut it down? How do you offset your carbon emission? Because only calculation is not the only thing which we have to do. That's the first step in carbon footprint, which is quantification of your CO2 and then offsetting it through different initiatives. So before I start, just an overview. A study which has been done by the NASA scientists which talks about where are we right now in terms of GHG emission, what's going to happen in the next 50 years and how do we overthrow it. So that's the main idea about this particular long and lengthy words on this particular slide. Okay, as discussed by Bonner already earlier, all our activities, whatever we do, be it transportation, be it waste management, be it energy consumption, everything accounts to a particular carbon emission. So there is a number which has been accounted for each and every activity of yours, which in turn leads to depletion in the ozone layer. So the main reason for ozone depletion layer is your GHG emission from different activities, which in turn has global warming, reasons for the typhoons, the recent typhoons which has been occurring in Philippines already, and then finally at the end, it's we itself who's been affected from this. So please don't think that, okay, I'm just doing some small emissions, so I'm not really being so much affected. At the end of the day, no matter who's emitting, we are the ones who are getting affected. So we all have to take an initiative to minimize our reduction, then only as a global emission we want to cut down the overall emission. So we have heard about a lot what is carbon footprint. So what is it exactly? That's the total amount of CO2 and any other greenhouse gas emissions by an organization. So from different activities, how much is the CO2 you are emitting? That's called the carbon footprint. Measure the impact of activities on environment, in particular climate change. So any kind of activity which has a significant impact on the climate change as well as the global warming, it's been accounted under carbon footprint already. The units generally which you see is in tons or kg of CO2. So it has a number, the units for this particular measurement is always kg or tons of CO2 which are emitted. On the right hand side you can see some of the activities which are a part of GHG emission. Be it your air travel, your fuel consumption, through maybe your transport vehicles, be it land or sea. The emissions which you do in the factory by burning of fossil fuel or maybe coal. So the emissions which are being done by them are also a part of your GHG account. But from different activities, there are so many gases which are being emitted. But not all of them are the ones who are accounted in the GHG protocol or in the carbon footprint assessment. These are the major 6 gases which account for the carbon footprint. Carbon dioxide, methane, N2O, HFC, PFC and SF6. So any of your activities which emit these particular gases are being accounted in your GHG emission. It has to be a part of your carbon footprint assessment. So you have to identify what are the critical activities which in turn in the end results in this particular gases emission, and they have to be accounted in your carbon footprint assessment activity. But all of them does not hold the same value. For example, if you own a biogas plant, you must be emitting methane. Whereas if you have your own transport, you are emitting CO2 from the fuel consumption. but both of them does not have the same impact on the climate or the global warming. So all the gases are being assigned different global warming potential. For example, carbon dioxide, the potential for it to have a significant impact on the climate change just hold value of 1. Whereas methane is almost 21, N2O 310, the maximum being the SF6, which is almost 23,900. So if you see, for any activity, if you emit 10,000 tons of CO2, whereas at the same activity, you emit almost around 500 units or 500 kilograms of SF6, the potential for it to affect on the climate change is much more higher. That's why we see these days there's a ban on the SF6 stereofoams for the same reason. The impact it has on the climate change is really high compared to any other gases. Now these are some of the activities which are a part of GHG emission or the carbon footprint assessment. If you see here, we have something called scope 1, something called scope 2, and something called scope 3. These are the different classifications or different sectors through which the GHG emission has been quantified. For example, scope 1, that says direct. So any activity which is owned by your particular organization, the emissions which are being done by those activities are your own direct carbon footprint. So an example would be company facilities. If you own your own facility, so how much is the GHG emission due to refrigeration, electricity consumption? In case you own an industry and you use your own power generation unit, so how much is the emission being done by burning of the coal or any other fuel which you are using? So these are the ones accounted in scope 1. Second one is your own vehicles, because there are possibilities that you are outsourcing your vehicles or you have your own company's vehicles. So any vehicle which is owned by the company, the emissions done by those particular vehicles are under scope 1 as well. That's directly been accounted under your own emission or under your assessment. Scope 2 are the indirect ones, which is nothing but the purchased electricity. If you are buying electricity from a third party, the emissions being done from the third party electricity power, that's under scope 2. So any carbon footprint report or any assessment needs to have the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So if you see any report, they have really quantified the measure of scope 1 and scope 2. Whereas scope 3 is the optional or the voluntary measurement system. It depends on you if you want to calculate for that or not. Whereas scope 1 and scope 2 is really mandatory to be assessed and reported. Scope 3 comprises of different areas. For example, how much is your paper consumption, how much waste are you producing, if you are outsourcing some work, how much are the emissions being done by the outsourced work. So all these things which is not under your influence to measure and calculate is counted under scope 3 emission. Because you don't really hold any influence over those activities, it's typically depend on the influence which you have on the third party to manage the data and collect the data. That's why it's an optional indicator to report on. So those are the different 3 types of scope which are there in GHG emission. You see, can be of 2 types. The measurement of emissions can be of 2 types. One, for the whole organization itself. How much is the CO2 emission or how much is the GHG emission from all the activities of your organization? The other one could be for a particular product. If you are producing a particular product, how much is the GHG emission you have done in all the activities which are involved in producing that particular product? This is nothing but the life cycle assessment. The term called for this is life cycle assessment, where you assess the complete life cycle of a particular product, do the assessment and finally submit the report. How much is CO2 being emitted in producing this particular product? So these are the 2 different areas in which the assessment is generally done. Now how do you calculate your carbon footprint? So for each and every activity which are discussed under scope 1, 2 and 3, you can take any activity, gather the data, multiplied by an emission factor which is generally provided by the local government or some of the agencies like GHG protocol and other SEAI. These are the ones who provide the emission factor, and then you get how much your total carbon emission. Now what data to gather for emission, for activity data? For example, if you are calculating for your electricity consumption, how much is my GHG emission to the electricity I have consumed? So you have to get the number of kilowatt hour you have consumed for a particular month or for a particular year. That's the data for electricity. Multiply it by the emission factor, and then you will get the how much is your CO2 by electricity. Similarly for transportation, how much of the fuel you have consumed for a particular month, a particular year, multiply by that respective emission factor, then you will get the CO2 emission from that particular activity. In the end, the total carbon footprint is nothing but the sum of the scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. The emissions which are being done by each and every individual activity under different scope, some of them in total is the total carbon footprint by the organization or maybe by the product as well. These are some of the companies around the world, particularly in Europe, which have been measuring their carbon footprint for particular products, and they are trying to reduce this most of the time wherever possible. So these are just some of the examples. If you see the Walker chips packet generally sold in Europe, at the end they have a stamp which says how much is the CO2 being emitted in producing one packet of this particular chips. How much is the CO2 being emitted in producing one loaf of this particular bread. So that's how they quantify, and that's how they try to cut down their GHG emission. Now once you have quantified your emission, the next step is to offset the emissions. You have to cut it down because there is no point in just doing the calculation but you are not taking any remedies or initiatives to cut it down. So the next step is cut down your GHG emission. The term which is called the offset. When you measure, it's called carbon footprint. When you cut down your GHG emission, it's called the carbon offsetting. So you're nothing about you're trying to cut down your GHG emission. These are just two of the simple ways how you can cut down your GHG emission. The most simple one is tree planting activities. Plant a number of trees depending on your carbon footprint, and that's how you can offset one of the way of offsetting your GHG emission. The simple steps in how to offset your emission. First thing, you need to calculate. You need to know how much are you emitting. Then only you can cut down or mitigate the emissions. Try to avoid the activities which you think have the most significant impact of the GHG emission. For example, if you think transportation consumes a significant amount of GHG emission, so try to reduce wherever possible your transportation. Involve more in the video conferencing because internet is going to cut down the GHG emission. So those are the areas you have to identify to avoid. Second one is reduce. Once some of the activities where you cannot really avoid, you have to reduce it. For example, any organization, they have some shuttle services, right, for the employees to come together to the office. So if 6 people are coming in the individual car, the carbon footprint is really higher. Whereas if you give one shuttle service and bring all of them together, that's a method to reduce your GHG emission. So those are some of the initiatives which you have to identify how you can reduce your GHG emission. So finally, when you try to avoid, you try to reduce, some of the activities really cannot reduce, cannot be avoided, then you have to offset those carbon emission. Offsetting means this is the emission which has to be there, which you really cannot compromise on. Then you finally buy some carbon credits or do some tree planting activities which is equivalent to that particular number of CO2 emission. So the term here is called the carbon neutral. There cannot be a term which is zero carbon because you really cannot have a zero carbon organization. So only thing you can do is neutralize your emission. In order to neutralize, how do we do it? For example, we are emitting 100 tons of CO2. Out of 100 tons, you have reduced and avoided 50 tons of emission from different activities. Finally, you are left over with